Okay, we're going to do the next two problems together. They kind of relate to each other. The two other sections of the cash flow statement. It says M12-6, based on the following information, compute cash flows from investing activities, and M12-7, based on the following information, compute cash flows from financing activities. In the last problem that we dealt with, we talked about calculating the operating section of the cash flow statement, and you have two methods to do that. You can do the indirect method or the direct method. Either method that you choose, you should get the same answer. It's just the method of how you get there that differs. With the investing and financing activities, regardless of whether you choose the indirect method or the direct method, the way you calculate these will be exactly the same. So the indirect method and direct method, they really only affect the different way you get there, really only affects the operating section. The investing financing sections, they work the same way. Things to know about the investing and financing section are, first, that you need to show both increases and decreases. When we talk about the operating section, particularly when you talk about the indirect method, you look at overall change in current assets and current liabilities, right? Has accounts receivable gone up? Has it gone down, right? Well, with the investing activities, we need to show each individual item as up or down, okay? So if there's a purchase of used equipment, we'd show that. If there's a sale of used equipment, we'd show that, okay? In financing activities, the same way, you want to show it go up or down. You want to only show in both of these sections changes in cash. Why do I see that? Because it seems pretty self-explanatory that you would only show changes in cash. But let's take into consideration what happens when you sell equipment, right? If you sell equipment, depending on what the book value is and depending on the cash that you've actually received, you could have a gain or loss on that exchange, right? The gain or loss is not a cash component. We only care in the cash flow statement about changes in cash. Gains and losses go to the income statement. Therefore, when you do the operating section, particularly if you're doing the indirect method and adjusting from net income, you're going to have to adjust for those gains and losses, which are non-cash components of the net income, right? The thing that should be reflected here on the investing activities, that should be the actual cash received, the proceeds received from disposing of that asset, okay? So that's what I mean by the investing and financing activities should reflect actual cash transactions, not the other components that can be associated with it, like gains or losses. The last thing I'll say before we get into the problem about the financing activities, or remember that dividends paid are included here. However, dividends received and interest received and interest paid all show up under the operating section, okay? All right. With these things in mind, let's go ahead and look at the data that it gives us. It tells us first on M12-6 that we have cash collections from customers. Well, we don't need that. That's erroneous information. Why? That's operating activities. Moving on, purchase of used equipment. Purchase of used equipment, that is an investing activity. If we purchase something, it's an outflow. Therefore, we're going to put parentheses around it. $200 outflow, purchase of used equipment. Moving on, depreciation expense, erroneous information that deals with the operating section. Sale of investment, that is pertinent information for the investing activities. We'll put $450 right here. Okay? That's an inflow. Why? We sold an investment, we got cash, and our investment went out the door. Moving on with the next data. Dividends received, as I just mentioned a moment ago, that is the operating section. In the same way with interest received is the operating section as well. That leaves us with a net cash provided by investing activities of $250. And notice this line item that I'm using here. This is not my choice of words. This is the format of the cash flow statement. You need to have at each subsection total, operating, investing, and financing, net cash provided by or used in whatever the activity is, whether it's operating, investing, or financing. So those are your subtotal comments. Those are your subtotal labels that you would put for each subtotal of the section, okay? All right, looking at the financing activities data. First, it says purchase of investments. Purchase of investments would be erroneous information. Why? That would obviously be investing activities. Dividends paid. Dividends paid is pertinent information. This is a financing activity. Dividends paid will be an outflow of cash, so we'll put this here at $1,200 outflow. Keep going down the list. Interest paid, like we mentioned a moment ago, interest paid would be an operating activity, so that is erroneous information. Additional borrowing from bank, that is pertinent information. $2,800 for additional borrowing of bank. And that's the last item on the list. So that leaves us with a total of $1,600 of net cash provided by financing activities. Okay, and I'm abbreviating a little bit here. Notice how the additional borrowing was an inflow. Why? Because we are signing a note, we're signing a loan, we're issuing a liability, right? And we get cash, so we're financing our operations. These are the other two sections of the statement of cash flows. Learn them, they will be on your exam. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know.